What if one of the most powerful men on Earth was killed in complete silence? On the night of September 18th, 1961, a United Nations aircraft approached Ndola in northern Rhodesia, now Zambia. On board was the Secretary-General of the United Nations, Dag Hammarskjöld. He was on a mission to negotiate peace in one of the most volatile conflicts of the Cold War. The aircraft never landed. No confirmed distress call, no clear explanation. Just wreckage, discovered hours later in the African forest. The official conclusion was simple: pilot error. But from the very beginning, that explanation didn't satisfy everyone. Witnesses reported seeing another aircraft in the sky that night. Some described flashes of light, and one of the men found alive at the crash site reportedly spoke of an explosion before he died. More than 60 years later, questions still remain. Tonight, we examine what really happened. Dag Hammarskjöld was not an obvious political figure. He rarely spoke in public with force and avoided the spotlight whenever possible. Born in Sweden in 1905, he came from a background of public service and diplomacy. Before joining the United Nations, he was known more as an economist and civil servant than a global leader. In 1953, he was appointed Secretary-General of the United Nations. At the time, many believed the role would remain largely administrative, but Hammarskjöld saw it differently. He believed the United Nations should act, not just observe. During his tenure, he expanded the role of the Secretary-General beyond precedent. He engaged directly in international crises. He negotiated ceasefires, helped establish early UN peacekeeping operations, and maintained communication with both Western and Eastern blocs during the height of the Cold War. He worked quietly, often behind closed doors, but his influence was significant. In regions where global powers competed for control, Hammarskjöld positioned the United Nations as an independent force. That independence was not always welcomed, because in the geopolitical climate of the 1960s, neutrality could be seen as a threat. And as tensions escalated in newly independent nations, his role would become increasingly difficult and increasingly dangerous. Africa, 1960. The Democratic Republic of the Congo had just gained independence. Instead, it marked the beginning of a crisis. Within days of independence, the country began to fracture. Soldiers mutinied. Violence spread in parts of the country. Belgian troops returned, officially to protect their citizens, but their presence raised serious concerns about sovereignty. Then came the most significant break The province of Katanga, one of the wealthiest regions in the Congo, declared independence under the leadership of Moise Tshombe. Katanga was rich in mineral resources, including copper and uranium. Its secession was not only a political crisis, but an economic one with international implications. The central government in Leopoldville struggled to maintain control, and as the situation deteriorated, Cold War tensions began to surface. The United States and its allies were concerned about Soviet influence in the region. The Soviet Union accused Western powers of interference. The Congo had become a global flashpoint. In July 1960, the Congolese government requested assistance from the United Nations. Dag Hammarskjöld responded. The UN deployed a peacekeeping mission, one of the largest at the time. Its mandate was limited to restore order and ensure the withdrawal of foreign troops. But the reality on the ground was far more complex. The United Nations was expected to remain neutral, yet neutrality became increasingly difficult to maintain. Hammarskjöld opposed the secession of Katanga. He insisted that the Congo remain unified, but he also resisted pressure from all sides to turn the UN into a military force aligned with any one power. This position placed him in a delicate and dangerous situation. To some, he was preventing outside domination. To others, he was interfering in their interests. By 1961, the crisis had deepened. Fighting continued in Katanga. Diplomatic efforts had stalled, and the pressure on the United Nations was increasing. It was in this environment that Hammarskjöld decided to take a more direct role. A decision that would lead him to Central Africa one final time. By September 1961, the situation in the Congo had reached a critical point. Fighting in Katanga continued, diplomatic efforts had stalled, and the pressure on the United Nations was increasing. Dag Hammarskjöld made a decision. He would travel personally to negotiate a ceasefire with Moise Tshombe. The meeting was to take place near Ndola in northern Rhodesia. It was not widely publicized, and the journey itself was conducted with limited security. On the evening of September 17, 1961, Hammarskjöld boarded a UN aircraft, a Douglas DC-6, known as Albertina. On board were members of his staff and crew assigned to the mission. The flight departed from Leopoldville and headed south into the African night. Conditions were routine. There were no confirmed reports of distress during the early stages of the flight. Communication with air traffic control appeared normal. As the aircraft approached Ndola, it began its descent. The runway lights were visible. The airport was expecting the arrival. And then, contact was lost. No confirmed distress call, no clear indication of mechanical failure, just silence. The aircraft did not land. It disappeared from communication just minutes before arrival. Hours passed, search efforts were delayed, and confusion spread among officials on the ground. It wasn't until the following day that the wreckage was located in a wooded area not far from the airfield. The aircraft had come down, short of the runway. What happened in those final moments remains one of the most contested questions in modern diplomatic history. Shortly after midnight, on September 18th, 1961, the aircraft carrying Dag Hammarskjöld did not arrive at Ndola. At first, there was uncertainty. Air traffic control had expected the landing, but there was no communication, no confirmed distress signal. Hours passed. Confusion grew among officials at the airport. The aircraft was missing, but its location was unknown. Search efforts did not begin immediately, and when they did, they faced the difficulty of locating a downed aircraft in dense terrain, in the dark. It was not until later that day that the wreckage was found. The aircraft had come down in a wooded area just a few kilometers from the runway. The scene suggested a controlled descent, followed by impact. Parts of the aircraft were burned. Debris was scattered, but not across a wide distance. Most of those on board did not survive. However, one man was found alive, though critically injured. He was taken for medical attention, but died shortly afterward. Reports later indicated that he had spoken briefly before his death. His word would become a point of lasting discussion. Initial assessments focused on the possibility of pilot error or misjudgment during the final approach. The aircraft had been descending at night toward an unfamiliar airfield. But from the beginning, there were aspects of the crash that raised questions. The delay in locating the wreckage, the lack of a clear distress signal, and the proximity to the intended landing site. What happened in those final moments was not immediately clear, and in the days that followed, that uncertainty would only deepen. While what was seen in the sky, in the hours and days following the crash, accounts began to emerge from people who had been near Ndola that night. Some described seeing an aircraft approaching the airfield shortly before midnight. That, in itself, was expected. But a number of witnesses reported something more. They claimed there was another aircraft in the sky at the same time. These accounts varied. Some described a smaller plane flying at a lower altitude. Others recalled seeing lights moving in close proximity to the larger aircraft. A few witnesses reported flashes, which they interpreted as possible gunfire or reflected light. It is important to note that these observations were made at night, often from a distance and under uncertain conditions. Not all accounts were consistent, and not all were formally recorded at the time. Nevertheless, the idea that another aircraft may have been present became a subject of ongoing discussion. Some early investigations acknowledged these reports, but found no conclusive evidence to support the presence of a second plane. Others later argued that the witness accounts deserved closer examination. Over the years, additional testimonies were collected. In some cases, individuals came forward long after the event, describing what they believed they had seen. These later accounts added detail but also introduced new questions about reliability. Was there another aircraft in the sky that night? Or were these observations the result of confusion in darkness and distance? Decades later, the question remains unresolved, and the possibility, however uncertain, continues to shape how the crash is understood. In the aftermath of the crash, official investigations began quickly. Reports were collected, witnesses were interviewed, wreckage was examined, and yet, from the very beginning, there were disagreements about what had happened. Several inquiries reached different conclusions, or left important questions unresolved. Some investigators supported the theory of pilot error. Others believed the available evidence was incomplete. Over time, attention began to focus not only on the crash itself, but on what may have been missing from the investigation. Certain witness accounts appeared inconsistent across different reports. Some testimonies were summarized briefly, while others were omitted entirely from early findings. There were also questions surrounding communications records, including whether all relevant transmissions had been preserved. In later years, researchers and investigators revisiting the case noted that some documents were difficult to locate or remained classified for extended periods of time. The passage of decades created additional challenges. Witness memories faded, physical evidence deteriorated. Some individuals connected to the events were no longer alive. In 2017, the United Nations appointed an independent review to examine new information connected to the crash. The review did not reach a definitive conclusion, but it stated that the possibility of external involvement could not be dismissed. Even after decades of investigation, the full picture remained incomplete. Not because there were no answers, but because too many pieces were still missing. As questions surrounding the crash continued, attention gradually shifted toward a more difficult possibility. What if the aircraft had not crashed accidentally? During the Cold War, the Congo was more than a newly independent nation. It was strategically important. Its mineral resources, particularly uranium and copper, were considered vital by international powers. The political future of the Congo was closely watched by governments, corporations, and intelligence agencies. In that environment, Dag Hammarskjöld's actions attracted both support and criticism. He insisted that the United Nations should remain independent of superpower influence. He opposed direct foreign intervention in the Congo, and he continued efforts to negotiate an end to the Katanga conflict. To some observers, those efforts threatened powerful interests. Over the years, various theories emerged regarding the crash. Some suggested the aircraft may have been attacked. Others speculated about sabotage or covert operations connected to Cold War politics. These theories have never been conclusively proven, but several factors continued to fuel suspicion. Witness reports describing another aircraft, questions surrounding missing records, and the broader political climate of the time. Researchers examining declassified material have pointed to the presence of intelligence activity throughout Central Africa during the crisis. However, no publicly available evidence has definitively established who, if anyone, was responsible for the crash. The difficulty lies partly in the nature of the Cold War itself. Governments operated through secrecy. Intelligence networks overlapped. Information was controlled, shared selectively, or withheld entirely. In that world, certainty was difficult to achieve. And yet, the possibility that Hammarskjöld may have died while attempting to negotiate peace continued to resonate internationally. Because if the crash was not accidental, then the death of a Secretary-General was not only a tragedy, it was a warning about the limits of neutrality during the Cold War. More than 60 years later, the final flight of Dag Hammarskjöld remains one of the most debated mysteries in United Nations history. Investigations have been reopened. Witnesses have spoken. Documents have been reviewed again and again, yet the complete truth may never be fully known. Perhaps that uncertainty is part of why the story still endures. Not only because of how he died, but because of what he represented. Dag Hammarskjöld believed that international diplomacy could exist above political power. He believed peacekeeping should not belong to any single nation or ideology. During one of the most dangerous periods of the 20th century, he tried to hold that idea together, quietly, relentlessly, often alone. To supporters, he became a symbol of principled diplomacy. To critics, he represented a growing United Nations that was becoming more independent and more influential. And somewhere between those perspectives, a plane disappeared into the African night. The crash changed the United Nations. It changed how peacekeeping missions were viewed, and it left behind a question that history has never fully answered. Was Dag Hammarskjöld the victim of a tragic accident, or did geopolitical interests intervene in ways the world still struggles to uncover? There may never be absolute certainty, but perhaps the deeper truth lies not only in solving the mystery, but in understanding the world in which it happened. A world shaped by fear, secrecy, competition between superpowers, and fragile nations caught in between. In that world, neutrality could become dangerous, even for the Secretary-General of the United Nations. Today, Dag Hammarskjöld is remembered not simply for the mystery of his death, but for the principles he defended while alive. Diplomacy over domination, independence over pressure, peace in a century defined by conflict. And perhaps that is why the search for answers continues. Because some mysteries are not only about the past, they are about whether truth itself can survive power, terror, and silence. The wreckage was found, the investigations were written, the decades passed. But the final question still remains. What really happened in the sky above Ndola?